The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. We got a nice crowd today, so I'm just going to wait a couple minutes while we get started and everyone else starts logging on. Thank you for joining us today.
I'm hearing some bell.
All right, so we will get started here. Once again, thank you for joining us. As you know, this is the ongoing webinar series that RTS has done. Today we have a couple of panelists that I think you'll find fascinating. It'll be Anna Eddy, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Native Foods, and Mike Kritzman, who is the CEO of SkillNet Software. And we've partnered with RTS to help actually create an electronic version of performance management, which is a process that we've used with companies for many, many years. The purpose of today's webinar is to really talk about a new paradigm of how we want to look at talent development. Traditionally, a lot of companies have talked about it. There's a tendency to say that people are our greatest asset. They say that out of one side of their mouth, and on the other side of their mouth, their practices don't reflect that. And that sort of corporate hypocrisy is creating challenges. In the restaurant industry, the biggest difficulty is that we are very dependent upon people, as you know. Turnover still remains over 100% at the team member level, which people sort of accept as a given. And then, of course, the management might range from 35 to 60 to 75%, and we see that as a given. That's a problem. We're not able to compete effectively. So we're going to go through a couple of case studies as well to give everyone a sense of how that works and what can you do to change it. So our agenda today is to look at the market trends on talent development. Mike's going to give us a larger overview of some of the best practices from large organizations and discuss how it can be scaled down to even if you're a small startup. You know, talent development can occur once you have more than 2 people working for you. And that's part of it, is how do you develop tomorrow's leaders, people to replace and have a good succession plan. The paradigm shift is to use purpose as a guiding light. Many times the difficulty with employees is they're not engaged. They have a job, they get a check. But as I like to say, it's hearts and heads first, hands second. And how do you get hearts and heads engaged? How do people willingly devote themselves to your goals and your objectives? And purpose is the way we do that. The next one is to focus going from activities to results-based focus. Anna's going to spend a lot of time discussing that. And then we're going to talk about going from micromanagement to self-management, which is a big shift in today's world. And lastly, of course, is to understand what the benefits are for a company, managers, the leaders, and the staff. So we'll let Mike, why don't you, Anna, why don't you walk us a little bit about how this all fits into strategic plans?
Yeah, so oftentimes companies will do a nice annual strategic plan, and there's a great deal of work that needs to be accomplished. And really what's important is aligning the company mission, vision, and core values to each position in the organization so that they understand their roles, their responsibilities, and what results are required of that position. So as we move forward, this is for the next slide, Fred. As we move forward, we're really looking at when there's an effective performance achievement system, it's at the heart of successful management. So we develop a process which will foster a culture of effective communication and accountability without taking away an individual accountability for themselves and their responsibilities. And we do this through coaching, self-development, continuous feedback, very structured manager meetings, and overall career planning with a lot of feedback in between. This is kind of an overview of what we'll be talking about today. You'll see it both in the beginning of the presentation, and then you'll see a live version of it that will be reinforced for the items that we're talking about right now.
Sana, I'd like you to share a couple of talent development best practices with the group here so they have a better understanding of how that works for them.
Yeah, so really it's about focusing on results rather than behaviors and activities. So a culture of that self-development and continuous improvement, that process establishes each staff person to understand their true value to the organization and the results that are needed from their position in order for their department to be successful, and therefore each department to be successful and achieve the company's objective. And they do so when they understand how their job and the requested outcomes fit inside the company's overall plan. We build on each member's strengths, and it motivates employees by supporting team members to achieve their full potential. Some of those key elements for success up and down the organization are focusing on results versus behaviors, aligning activities, making sure that system-wide we're looking at the business long-term, and the ability to produce meaningful measures. This helps us to reduce turnover, increase productivity and results overall with the company achieving their strategic plan and long-term vision.
So many people on the call today may or may not have some form of talent development program. They may think they do it informally. They may lack the process. And one of the things that Mike's going to get into is to sort of show what the larger companies are doing, what the broader trends are. And our objective, of course, in today's webinar is to keep your attention focused on what we're talking about so that you can see that there's some actual benefit for you you can learn from. So, Mike, if you could just walk us through the traditional approach.
Yeah, so thank you. And so when we're talking about talent development, and Anna's remarks insightful, most companies sort of put their focus on talent development as part of a performance review, and many companies are still just doing this once a year. So when we're talking about a traditional approach, you know, to sit down and actually review how someone's doing and how do they get better and what do they need to change, you know, the idea of doing this once a year just reminds me of, you know, like in sports, and I'm in Chicago and hopefully the Cubs will do better for the rest of the World Series. What coach would wait until the end of a season to give their players instructions on how they can play better? It's literally real time. And so you know, in terms of the workplace, almost half of HR executives feel that these reports, when they're done, are not even accurate. And either they're looking at what happened most recently, or they're reflecting back on things that were problems months ago that was fixed, that just tends to demoralize you know, the staff. Employees don't feel like bosses have reflected in advance, that they're just winging it when they get into the room, and that just makes them feel even more disengaged, like, you know, they're not taking this stuff seriously. And sort of the real shame of it all is, you know, with as much time that goes into trying to prepare for these annual reviews, that employees, frequently a third of them, perform worse because they feel like they've had their face rubbed in problems of the past, or that the manager hasn't even taken the time to think about them. And next slide, Fred.
No, what I want to comment on that, Mike, that most people don't like. I mean, performance reviews are a four-letter word in most companies, you know, closely following bonus. And the big part of it is they don't think that their supervisor is well prepared for their performance evaluation, usually focused in the last 2 weeks worth of work rather than a full year's worth of work, assuming it's an annual review or a quarterly review. And that frustration, I think, also extends to the leader, because everyone's scrambling to get ready for these performance evaluations, and there's no real sense of commitment to the process and what the benefit would be. And of course, that's what we want to change to get from that paradigm to one that's much more effective and successful.
Great. And so the millennials are sort of at the total opposite side of the spectrum, where they're used to immediate feedback. They're all on their phones getting you know, feeds about everything in real time, and they just can't stand you know, being judged once a year, and when they get into these kind of meetings, they feel like they're blindsided, like nobody talked to them about this problem before, and it bothers them so much that 25% call in sick on the day of the review, and those that go through the reviews, 25% of them start looking for a job because they don't think this is the kind of culture that they want to be a part of. And so in your workforces, I think millennials are a bigger part. They're actually the largest percentage of the workforce today in the United States. And if this is if this is the kind of approach that you guys are using, you're going to run into problems. And the kinds of problems are disengagement, where they don't feel like the company cares about them, which is, the whole approach for talent development is to help people get better, and that creates a loyalty. And if people leave, it's expensive. The search, the interviewing time, the training time, certainly to be avoided. Research shows it's up to 200% of annual salaries. So here's a list of some iconic firms. And you might look at this list and say, well, these are giant companies. You can't really run in the same kind of models that they do. But I would just point to Native Foods and Anna's on the call today. All of these companies have publicly announced that they're moving away from this annual heavy-handed process to a frequent coaching model. And many of our customers are smaller companies, and I'm excited that there's technology to make this stuff easy. The idea is not to try to do this painful model more frequently. It's been reinvented, and later in our show this morning, Matt will show you exactly how the technology that we've developed works. So now let's just turn the corner on sort of best practices to keep people. Retention is such a big thing, and I wanted to talk about that really specifically. I mentioned this earlier, but one of the most compelling reasons people stay is they feel like they're improving. This old saying, the grass is greener. Oftentimes the grass feels greener because they feel like they'll advance, like they'll get better at what they're trying to be good at somewhere else. And if you make professional development a priority in your enterprise, then they won't have to leave to go get it. A next sort of huge lesson learned is, especially for the millennials, is to communicate your company's values and your mission, not only sort of frequently to employees, but in the interview cycle, so that people can sort of connect to the company's mission early and weed themselves out if they can't relate. Many companies have said they would take a pay cut to work at an organization where they have values more like their own. Lastly, and sort of most important, and this is sort of the low-hanging fruit for everyone, is listening. People crave a chance to contribute creatively, and that their ideas are heard and that they matter. And they'll stick around for the long haul if they feel like they're being listened to. So some quick hits. We're big believers in this Gallup this Gallup approach called Strength Finders. There's a book that's become very popular. Basically, what if you boil it all down, this approach is to find out what people are good at and then help them develop at the things they're already good at, and not focus so much on areas that they struggle, and then focusing on a few things, do a few things well, provide immediate feedback when they accomplish things, and then not just talk about what they need to do, but be specific on the kind of action steps in order to grow. And so these are sort of the essence that we wanted to share for improving performance and talent development. Fred?
Yeah, so we're going to just take a really quick poll and ask you, would you like to see your performance improve? It may sound a little bit axiomatic, but let's see what you can tell us about it, so we'll see what the audience thinks. So just click on yes, no, or maybe, and then as soon as you get that done, we'll move forward. All right, so let me continue, and so as to be expected, it appears that the vast majority did want, in fact, want to see the performance improve. So Anna, if you could just take us then through position plans.
Yeah, absolutely. So the position plan is the foundation of this whole performance achievement process. And what it does is it describes it starts by describing the largest possible result of the position. So each individual in the organization will understand very clearly what their outcome is that they are to achieve day in and day out in their job. And the number one thing that the position plan does is it creates clarity. And that clarity is the main goal. And it's the foundation for understanding your role and responsibility. It's also part of the one-on-one process, and it ties directly, actually mirrors the performance review, which will be done on a regular basis. And it is aspirational. It describes what should be, not necessarily what is today. It's about where you want to go. So a few things that are different between a job description and a position plan, which are on the next slide, would be a job description is very tactical. It's one item at a, one more slide. It's very task-oriented. It's almost as if something you can check off the box. It's short-term, and it creates a culture of micromanagement. Whereas when you come to the position plan, it establishes objectives. It's about big picture, and it's aligning the company's strategy. So again, when I talk back to the strategic plan or big picture of what the company's trying to establish, it's aligning those strategies and goals. It's defining all of the major areas of responsibility and setting performance results, not activities, but actual black and white results, so that it creates a very black and white type of performance versus something that's very anecdotal or subjective. And it defines long-term results. It's not just looking for what are you doing today, but what is going to get us the result that we're looking for 3 to 6, 9 months out. And it establishes a single line of accountability, meaning that each individual understands very clearly what their roles and responsibilities are and what their part is in helping their department to be successful, and therefore their department helping the company to be successful. And when all our position plans are executed well, the company will achieve the desired result, and you'll have a self-developing workforce. So
Anna,
quickly look.
I'm going to add something to that for a second, if I might. I think the difference would be that when we meet companies, we meet new employees, or even leaders, you say, if you ask the question, what do? You end up getting activities that effectively is their job description. If you ask them the question, what results are you held accountable to, that's really much more along the lines of a position plan. And it's that difference that sort of focuses people on the outcomes of their work rather than the activities of the work that gets results, because results are outcomes of activities. And so the position plan immediately focuses people on the long-term outcome and results rather than just the activities.
Perfectly said. So this is an eye chart. It is not meant to be easily read, but think for a moment if you were to have every single position in your company laid out side by side, and you would know what everyone's mission was and what those major areas of responsibility. So as a CEO or COO or leader of the organization, you would be able to see your team at a glance, and there's not a single item that there's overlap, so that it's very clearly defined who is responsible for specific outcomes in the company. And that's what we're actually doing as we build this. So that's just kind of a big picture view of it. And then as we go on, we can see that here's an example of the beginning of a position plan. And this is a general manager example. And so when I talk about the mission being, here's the most important thing in your particular role, what you're responsible for, that would be the mission statement. Then underneath that, these major areas of responsibility, Well, as a general manager, it would be sales and profit, management, HR, compliance, training and development, communication, culture, and values. Now, you will see this a little bit later when Matt and Mike take you into a software system. You'll see how these translate directly and also translate directly to the performance review and one-on-ones. To the right here, so that's currently how we're doing things, and this stays constant, whether it's manual or using technology. And then on the right-hand side of this particular slide, you'll see on the technology component how it's just a pull-down menu. That's how they translate.
So that's a screenshot of the actual page.
Yes.
Right. So let's get more into how performance management functions in terms of talent development and some of the processes. So Anna, if you can continue, that'd be great.
Yeah, so there's a number of pieces that go into this. So I'm going to talk about the manager meetings as one, because the manager meetings are not just a room where everyone walks in randomly. It's very, the agenda is thought out very strategically, and we're starting thoughtfully with what is our strategic plan, what are those critical few initiatives that must be accomplished through the department, and then by individuals' roles, which they are defined from their position plan, of what are they responsible in to achieve to help that department reach the goals that they're working on. And it'll show how that lays out. When it comes to the individual performance coaching meetings or one-on-ones, which a number of companies call, there's a number of different names out there for that. What that is about is really that team member, it shifts it from a boss to employee communication to an employee to supervisor communication, where 80% of the content is driven by the individual, that employee. And they are owning their responsibilities, they're looking at their position plan for results, they're creating the agenda, and they're setting the appointment. So this creates a situation where just every person is accountable for themselves versus each manager accountable for 5 to 8 people that report to them, right? The coach holds the team member accountable, provides honest feedback and clear direction, and supports self-development, and does help them with prioritizing initiatives. And then as we go on, next slide, you can see just what an agenda might look like. And that's where we collect and track data, making it easy for managers to have those monthly conversations. The managers to coach and provide guidance, and the individual takes responsible for their results in alignment to the position plan. Now here's a paper version of that that's often used, but we'll also see the electronic of how this gets translated electronically, and to what Mike was talking about earlier, takes away from that pressure around an annual performance review and creates an ongoing conversation. Right?
Did you want me to talk on this one? Yeah, just so as I said earlier, we're trying to help companies move from a manual and paper-based routine to using their smartphones and technology to streamline and make this whole process easy and efficient. And when you do this kind of thing through technology, then the back-end reporting can be pretty exciting. And here's 2 screenshots, and we'll get into the demo. You'll see these sort of real time. But the one on the left is an individual, and then what's the ratings on different things associated with their job. And the one on the right is actually the report that you'd print out during the one-on-one to have a sit down and say, how are you doing? What are the, how are you progressing? I think what is the movement from where you were to where you're going, and back to sort of reinforcing the feedback of job well done, or congrats on moving that, so people feel like their efforts are being noticed.
Yeah, the thing that I want to note is that for those of you who are on the webinar, I'm sure you're being pulled by your email, something on the web, some news feature. And they've shown in recent studies that a goldfish has got an 8-second attention span and human beings have a 6-second attention span. So we recognize that at any moment on these webinars that we lose people because they have an easy distraction they can go play with and we would not be aware of that. The nice thing about this new electronic version of talent development is that you can see it's very visual. And so without having to spend a whole lot of time reading things, you can quickly at a glance see whether the performance criteria and the goals and objectives are being met, so you can take corrective action, either the individual by themselves or by their supervisor when they sit down and work with them on a one-on-one coaching. And that's one of the powers of going to a digital platform, as well as the fact that you can keep track of everything without trying to have little pieces of paper in today's digital world. So Mike, what's the effect then in terms of careers?
Well, I think that's the big idea. When you know where someone is and what skills and capabilities they have, then you can make informed decisions and have sort of what's next for you based on where you are, and in streamlining the effort to identify who's the best person for that promotion based on their skills, not your gut or your sort of what people are saying, these more subjective measures.
That's great. Well, we're going to get to the fun part here and try and switch this over to Matt so he can give us a quick demo, and you can see how this works functionally. So if you have questions about this demo as Matt is doing it, please send it to us, and then we'll try and get that question over to Matt, and he can answer the question for you, or Mike as well. So Matt, if you can take it away.
Great. And you're all able to hear me and see my screen?
Yep.
Good job, Matt.
All right. Thank you. So, my name is Matt Hochstein. I'm Vice President here at SkillNet, and very thankful for this opportunity to talk with you and share kind of what we're doing in taking these assessments and these reviews digital. So, as Anna showed earlier, at Native Foods they have these position plans where they have the major areas of responsibility and the specific kind of supporting activities. So we've taken some of those positions, and we just have 4 started on right now. And I believe the eventual number is going to be more like 10 to 15, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So we have these up here, and you would just be able to go in between different ones. And I'm going to drill in right here to the culinary lead position. So just to bring up, remind us what we're talking about. This is the culinary lead position plan in the Word format, where we have the major areas of responsibility down here, and then also as I scroll down, now we have specific supporting activities and measures. And now in the digital form, we have those major areas of responsibility and the specific specific tasks or jobs or measures that go into each one of them. So sales and profit has these 5 are what somebody would be measured on. So what does that look like somebody is actually measured? So I'm going to go into how we actually do the assessment. So our assessments come in the form of emails. It stops people from having to log in and having another system to log into. Really easy, goes through their email and they click the button, and it brings up their assessment. Now these these areas should look familiar. They are the major areas of responsibility. So if I drop anyone down, now I get what 1 through 5 means and my ratings for each one of these. So I would just go through and say, how am I doing in each one of these specific areas, along with descriptions of what this area encompasses and what the measures are. So as Fred was talking to earlier, job descriptions just aren't specific enough and don't have enough kind of accountability. Whereas when you're going through this, you can actually measure specific areas of your strengths and weaknesses. And so the employees look at from 1 through 5, rate themselves, and then they can also add comments or suggestions saying, giving their manager the input that, I went to a seminar on this to try and get better, so their manager know more information. Anna, is there anything you wanted to add about how this process can benefit the managers for your organizations?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're able to do now, as we shared any one of these items, we've spent time with our leads, in this case, culinary leads, and gone through the entire position plan. We've selected one area that each person would like to work on, and this can be updated, whether it's weekly or monthly, and between self-review, manager review, and comments, so that we can see that there's ongoing development and attention to any one of these categories, and the individual themselves has helped us select what they'd like to work on. In a few cases, it's manager-driven, but oftentimes it's the individual that's asking, I'd like to know more about this. So it's a great opportunity to close the gap of that annual review and to give regular feedback.
Yep, we do have a question from the audience. The question is, can specific goals be embedded into the key measurements graph to review during or prior to review on the one-on-one process?
It's a great question. Absolutely. So it allows us to have, and Matt can go there, but it allows you to have a history of the comments and suggestions and past. And just this morning, and I know Matt can go to that with the demo, sent out a link for me to update. And so we have some items in here just on a demo for you to see, but I could go in and update my performance, add some comments, and there'll be a history of that prior to the scheduled one-on-one.
Yeah, the other thing to notice for everyone on these major areas of responsibility, all the statements are written in present tense. So the assumption is that they're in a current state. So the evaluation is basically answering the question, are they, and to what degree are they? It's not that things like, labor will be good or budget could be met, or should be met. It's that it is met. And then to the extent that you are not doing that on this scale, you're able to evaluate that performance. And we are strong proponents of giving people the answer to the test ahead of time and essentially say, this is how you're going to be measured. So when you give a team member a position plan and essentially you show them a copy of the performance evaluation, they're one and the same except one's got a grading to it. They know how they're being held accountable. And that's a big difference from the typical activity focus of a lot of people versus results focus.
Great. So move ahead, Fred.
Matt,
keep on going.
Yeah. So Matt, why don't you move through the different sections, and I'll talk to parts of it, and Mike can chime in as needed.
Sure. You mean the different sections of the whole process, or did you want to go deeper into this actual review?
Into the actual demo, as you can, and I'll talk to the pieces of it.
All right. So now that we've gotten the data into the system, I'm going to go to what we call the SkillNet. It's going to provide the results of the assessment for everyone. So I can go and select the position. I can also select specific skills or even locations, but I'm just going to do all culinary lead locations here. And what I recognize these across the top, the major areas of responsibility across the top, we call them competencies too. And then we have everyone's scores across the side here. Now each one of
Matt,
oh, go ahead, Anna.
You have a terrible echo right now, so how about if I explain part of this and Mike can jump in, but you please move us from screen to screen, right as you plan.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so if you can see all the scores in the middle, you're able to look at your entire team at a glance and see where they're strong and weak. And also, through doing that, you can see as a company where you might need development. And you can key in on overall development in any given area. And as you hover over the top, it'll give you a full description of what any one of those categories would be and what the sales and profit mean for a culinary lead. So you can easily see what's being measured.
Great. All right. So the next thing I want to show is how you can even switch in between self and get the manager's ratings as well. So you can get self and 360. Next, I'd like to actually drill down into one of the people here. Let's go click on Anna. And Anna, do you want to talk to what we're seeing about your profile here?
Yeah, sure. So you can see any certifications that I had. So if you have people that need serve safe, food handlers, beverage handling, any of those items can be entered into this, and you can have expiration date so that you'll be able to tell if something's not working right. We'll be able to see on the left-hand side where all the colored stripe bars are of just where I'm strong and where I'm weak. And then on the far right, you can see the actual lead that I have a development plan in place, which is the IDP. That's a development plan about management, and that's something that I've been working on. So, and someone had asked about the history or any kind of comments. You can see in the middle box towards the bottom, there's different comments that are happening about going back and forth on progress. So it allows you to see a social communication for each individual as well. And then you can earn badges. So for example, we have like an interview class that is like a behavioral interviewing class for all of our leads and managers. After they've attended that and been certified, then they could earn a badge so that company-wide we would know this person is certified to do interviews. And you can have any kind of badges. You can customize that however you like.
Great. And one thing I want to go into is this idea of the individual development plan. So click into here. And for any area that has rated yourself for, and are you okay? Are you able to hear me okay now, Anna?
No, go ahead and click that open, Matt. So as we look at this is an area that that I was working on. I put together an IDP for this particular item, and you can see the date that it went in and when it was due. In this case, we actually have a video for me to watch, and so on the resources, we can just click on that little icon, and it'll pull up the video. I can obviously watch the video. I can report back on what I learned, what my behaviors will change, and based on what I've learned. And then I can add an additional item that I'd like to begin to work on. So there's a number of ways that you can upload tools into this system to be able to manage everyone's development resources. And you can create an entire library of resources as well for training material.
Just to add one thing to that. The idea of using smartphones for this stuff, we think is somewhat revolutionary. So the users could have their ratings right in their pocket, and that video, the individual development plan, is also right in their pocket. So when they have a break or some downtime, or they're on the train getting back and forth from where they're going, they can work on their development and then update it. So the next time they have that one-on-one with their manager would see, and I think Matt's going to show some of those progress graphs. But the idea of bringing the stuff down using technology right into their pockets is such a big game changer, instead of the sort of paper, difficult ways that many of you might be currently using. Back to you, Matt.
Great. All right, so next we're going to actually take a look into Anna's specific skills and competencies here. So Anna, why don't you go ahead and describe what we're seeing on the page here as I navigate.
Okay, you're not echoing right now, Matt. If you want to go ahead.
Oh, okay, then let's go ahead with me then. So what I'm looking at here is Anna's actual ratings, so what she's actually put herself down for, and then the comments section here that tells me she changed her score to 3 because she understands that continuous improvement is important. So I'm getting an idea of why she rated herself somewhere and what she rated herself, which then kind of into this multi-rater grid where I'm seeing what she rated herself right next to what her manager rated her as. So I'm seeing a couple areas where she thinks she's actually weaker than I think she is, so maybe that's a hidden strength for her, or an area where, and it comes up in red here with the gap of -2, where she thinks she's strong and I don't think she is, and now we have an area that might be a blind spot for her. So these really become the basis for these manager conversations in those one-on-ones, to have specific areas and specific tasks that you can say, we disagree on how you're doing in this area. And then I can even go ahead and print this out so that if I were to sit down, in person for a one-on-one with Anna, we'd have this to look at and actually go through. So the next area I want to focus on is this progress, where now I can actually track how Anna's improving over time on different competencies. So I can see, in human resources, she started out down here, and she's grown over time. So I can see that, there's a difference between an employee who stays stagnant, kind of at the same level all the time, and someone who started out low and is getting higher. We want that employee who's striving to be better and improving their skills all the time.
Matt, we have a question in regards to the ability to have any types of quizzes after watching a video. It's just as was demonstrated, or any other type of quiz that could be inserted, like L&D systems, or is it pretty much just standalone that they watched it and you move on from there?
So we have options for that. We do have a capability to do something like the L&D system with the quizzes, and we can even score them. Those don't feed directly into the skill ratings, but we have that ability. We also have it where you can just say somebody watched it and that's that's what they were supposed to do, and that's
Okay, so it sounds like so you can have some form of quiz, or if someone's got an L&D system separately, the quiz can exist there. But here you can definitely ascertain that they in fact viewed or did the activity you asked them to do.
Exactly.
Right. Thank you.
Great. All right. So all of this culminates in the performance report, which is kind of a record keeping of these one-on-one coaching conversations. So I've got 2 of these for Anna. I'm going to click on the September one here. And so we've already seen the skill portion of this report, those 1 through 5 ratings. Now we're going to bring in the discussion topics, where these discussion topics could be anything you want to talk about. It just in a narrative aspect to the coaching conversation, where instead of just the 1 through 5s, I'm actually answering questions or talking to specific areas. And for Anna, these correlate directly with their core values, their culture and values aspect. So she wants to know, how do you think you're doing in these core value areas? Now I get to say what I think she's doing in these, and then this same report was sent to her, so we get her view and my view, and we can put those together. So I'm going to go down to the report here, and we can see that in this performance report, I can see a summary of where she is, and in total, where she is on her skills in total. And just to throw Anna a bone here, this is just for demo purposes, and it's not 10 at her job. She's not in the top 30%. She's in the top 1%, and she's great at it. So we'll throw that out there.
Hey, Matt, let me just add one thing here. Is this we've told you guys a lot today, and this notion of creating the list of skills and then having people do ratings and having managers do ratings on this 1 through 5 scale, where we're showing 62%. If that was 100%, then the person would have been rated 5 out of 5 for every single one. And so, the algorithm is actually taking this down to something kind of like school, where if you're 90, that's that's like an A, and and on down. But this sort of notion of creating metrics around the subjective nature of how someone's doing at their job is really what we're trying to boil down to, sort of the simple at a glance you can see on a bar chart, where if you're all the way there, a 5 is a perfect score, and if you add them all up, then you'll turn it into a percentage out of 100. So that's and then these graphs are showing sort of progress over time. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Great, thanks, Mike.
And I think you were going to say something.
No, I was just going to quickly say 2 things. One, some companies, a 3 is doing a really great job, so you can calibrate that how you want. and then that's, that might be your expectation, and that where people are really reaching to. And the other thing is oftentimes culture and values are something that's written up on the wall. At Native Foods, it's something that as a company we're living and breathing and reinforcing all the way down to the employee level. This is how we keep it alive. On every single person's position plan, these 4 elements are written out. They're expected. We talk about them regularly. We talk about them at every meeting, and you can see how we just bring them back into measuring for performance as well. So that's kind of a sample of what the whole SkillNet system can do, and it's just really dipping your toe in the water. There's so much more that it can do and can show you, but we wanted to give you an overview. We realize that we just have a few more minutes left, and I want to make sure that there's time for questions as well.
That's great. Well, Matt, that's fantastic. And again, we can arrange with SkillNet any kind of demos if anyone has more information. It's a very robust system. Go on from there. So, Anna, if you can begin to sort of recap what we've learned and sort of bring it on home, that'd be great.
Yeah, and so these are all the different elements that we talked about today, and just how they tie together through the SkillNet system. I don't need to say more.
So essentially, what we did review today was really is how to make sure we're increasing the skills, but most importantly, engagement. Today's employee, and maybe always, but we just never acknowledge it, really need to have some sort of emotional engagement and connection to a company's purpose, why they do what they do, not just what they do. And the idea of growing their career over time and improving their skill set and having a way of visually tracking it. That's why I think one of the nice things about SkillNet is the badges. It really has allowed people to sort of get a sense of accomplishment and achievement, and it makes them eligible for more money. And it does begin to solve part of that retention problem that we've had in this industry. The days of accepting over 100% turnover have to go away. We just can't afford that. There's not going to be enough people left. And while a lot of people, the jobs we have in restaurants are no longer a stepping stone to a career. In some cases, this is how they support their family, and that's something we need to be sensitive to. And so I do want to give you an opportunity if anyone has any more questions. You've been asking questions along the way, and I appreciate that. We have the screen up here showing you how you can reach out and contact us if you need to do that. And as we have implemented performance management and talent development in over half a dozen companies to great success, and it allows them to grow and scale and to not just reduce turnover, but more importantly, improve performance results and really hit the financial targets and guest metrics that they really want. So, Mike, do you have anything you want to say to wrap up?
Let me come. Yeah, no, I think certainly appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys. One thing I wanted to clarify was the descriptions of the culinary role and the position plan that we were looking at was extracted from the paper version that Native had been doing, and we imported that, and so what you were seeing was sort of that revised approach, the electronic approach to what they were doing. And if when you were looking at that and you said, well, that's not really the way we do it, or the kind of things that we'd want to measure, that's sort of to be expected, because we would be able to import and sort of tailor things exactly for you. So it really would be sort of extracted from the measurements that you guys are doing. And if you're not sure exactly what the best practices are and how you want to do it, then I think that's why we're so excited about our relationship with Fred and the Results Through Strategy team to help to help really dial in our tech for your business. So thank you again, and any questions, we're certainly interested in helping you guys.
Okay, Anna, any closing words from you?
No, thank you.
Excellent. Well, everyone, thank you for your attention today, and look out for more ongoing webinars from Results Through Strategy. This has been a really informative panel, so Mike and Anna, thank you for your participation, and let's all go out and have a great day.